Hello everyone, my name is Prabodh, and today I'll be presenting my topic on AI versus artists. So basically, I just want to talk about my overview of my slides. I'm first going to start on my abstract, and basically I'll talk about the overbearing problem of AI, and then I'll lead on to my literature review, where I'll discuss on my gap and reinforce it, and then I'll lead into my methodology and results, and then speak on limitations and my suggestions for future researchers who might be working with the same topic, and then my conclusion and website. So I want to first talk about how AI it's beneficial, but of course there's some drawbacks while it's beneficial. It's placed many people in different professions at risk of losing their jobs. One of the most noticeable ones is of course computer science. AI bots like ChatGPT are able to easily replicate code and do it in record time, so it really removes that risk of necessity in their jobs. This also takes place in the music industry, where AI is able to now produce vocals and produce music, and it's hurting artists' profession by making the necessity for them to not need to be there in a sense of way. So I'll be moving on to my literature review now, and I want to first talk about current studies with the topic of AI and music. They mostly focus on AI being perceived as its own actual artist. So they had a sample, and basically it was a group of people, and they were asked to tell the difference between an artist and an AI artist. The musics were not the same pieces, but oftentimes the people in those those samples were fooled that AI was an actual human, but they don't reference the fact that AI is able to impersonate these artists. So basically, I want to bring up the UMG predicament to talk about why this is a problem. So Ghostwriter 977 was an unmasked or a masked consumer who decided to take the popular artist Drake and take his voice and basically make a new song called Heart on My Sleeve. And he took notice because that song gained millions and millions of streams. But while he tried to file for it to get copyrighted, there was an issue because in general, AI music has been seen as free use, and basically meaning that anybody has rights to that song. But this was a different circumstance because, of course, Drake's voice was stolen. So it took a while, but eventually Drake was given the rights to the song. I also want to show the severity by showing that applications like VoiceMod and Speechify, which are popular AI applications where you can take someone's voice and change it in real time, which shows how severe and easy it is for anyone to steal someone else's voice and to produce its own song. So I now want to move on to my research question, and basically my question is, can MBTHS students hear the difference between AI replicated vocals and the artist itself? Basically, this question I made was so I could see how severe of a problem AI being able to replicate the voice really is, and I chose to do MBTHS students because students were an easy large access sample group. I didn't want to have different age groups and then there'd be an unequivalent ratio between the amount of people per age group. And while I brought out the survey, I got about 66 sample responses, and I also thought that by doing students all at MBTHS, everyone is about the same age group, and because they're about the same age group, their hearing ability is about the same as well. So that removed that as a bias factor on my results. Of course, there's some variability in between. Variability between different people's hearings. Some people, of course, have better hearing than others, but for the most part, it would be about the same. So now I'll be moving on to my methodology, and I'm going to start with my hypothesis. So I believe that most people uh, would be fooled by AI vocals because talking to my friends and uh, like when people publicly release that they've used AI vocals, most of the time people state that they haven't, like they were unable to tell that it was AI, and for that reason I just felt like that AI vocals would likely fool most of the sample responses. And for my methodology breakdown, I chose to do a study design. And I basically built a survey in order to get that larger sample size. And then I dispersed that survey throughout my teachers, and they posted it on their classroom, and then they got students to respond that way. And I collected data through multiple choice questions and one response-based question. And basically, some of the multiple choice questions I put are listed above. And basically, I had two songs, Sky City, which is by Kanye West. One verse was created using AI, and the other verse was purely the artist himself. So I disguised both songs by just like titling them verse 1 and verse 2, and then I let them both listen. I let the user listen to both of them, and then they answered a series of questions afterwards. And most of the questions talk about whether they listened to the artist beforehand, how much they listened to that artist, if they've heard of the song before, if they've already knew beforehand which verse was AI, and then I asked them what verse they actually thought was AI, and then my final question was the response-based question per music, and basically I asked them to list reasons on why they felt that certain song or a certain part was AI. And basically, using that data, I chose to do an analysis approach and basically take statistical data, do the multiple choice answers, and put them into like pie charts to see like the difference in ratio of how people responded. And then that final response-based question I used to correlate those multiple choice questions to that specific reasoning. So when people talked about Timeless, for example, they said that they blamed audio quality, with 84% guessing correctly on which song was actually which song was AI. And then for Sky City, 66% guessed wrong on what verse is AI, and that was mostly to blame because the transition and the seamlessness of to differentiate between AI and the artist itself was much harder. For my possible limitations, I put that the sample size might have not been large enough, and that was really because of voluntary bias. Even though I dispersed it as much as I could, not a lot of people responded, and I felt like if I had more students who responded, there would have been a more proper sample, like there would be less of a bias. And then I also put the factor of falsification of data. Since I did a survey, there's no real way for me to verify whether someone just searched up which song was AI or which part of the song was AI. I considered doing interviews, but I factored that larger sample size into consideration, so I just decided to do the survey over the interviews. For future research, I recommended that people try implementing different audio qualities at play, so like to see whether how well like the AI is replicating the vocals makes it like easier or harder to tell whether whether someone could be fooled. And basically that led to my solution on, with the use of future research, the people can make it like a set law, so a certain audio quality could be considered the perfect balance between AI vocals and the actual person itself. So they could like, so that way the consumers wouldn't be fooled, and they could like differentiate, and the artist could be able to keep the credibility while also gaining gaining that ability to use AI as well. And then I also chose that like if someone else out of like an outside source decided to steal someone's voice, then the rights would belong to the artist itself. And for my conclusion, I stated that it's clearly an identifiably drastic problem with the likelihood of someone being fooled being extremely high. But I feel as though like with this future research, it could be a problem. It is a problem, but it could be like possibly prevented. And this is my work cited.
Okay. What was one obstacle or challenge you encountered while implementing your research method, and how did you address it?
The first challenge I noticed was that though I had first only put multiple choice questions, and though I was finding that people couldn't see or couldn't tell the difference, I had no distinct reasoning on why. So after that, I decided to add that question, that open response question, and then take the most accumulated or most common reasoning, and then factor that to correlate my multiple choice statistical information with the response-based question.
Thank you.
If you could have one ideal audience member to be present here for your presentation that you feel would benefit the most from listening to your presentation, who would that be and why?
Maybe somebody from like the music department, because that way, if anybody were to use AI in their class, they would be able to like differentiate the difference between the two, and that way it removes people not being credible in a way.
Thank you.
Which of your sources was the most influential, and in what way is that influence apparent in your final conclusion or results?
The most influential one was probably the source where it talked about UMG and copyright laws in AI, and basically it considered all the AI music to be free use, and by making everything free use, I modeled my solution off of that, basically giving the rights to all artists, because in the end their voice is a part of their talent, and considering that as a factor, I decided to give it to the artists.
Thank you. Does anybody have any additional questions?